and agree on the approach and modalities for the nationwide public dialogues at sectoral and community level. And finally, to set up a broadly representative steering committee to coordinate the implementation of the national dialogue going forward. For that purpose, the provision has been made for 1,000 delegates during the convention in the next 4 days. To date, 755 individuals have been invited from over 30 sectors and over 200 organizations. Understanding that the initial allocation may not have covered all sectors sufficiently, a further 245 delegate spaces will be allocated to organizations that have asked to participate in the national dialogue. In allocating spaces, efforts have been made to ensure sectoral diversity and representativity. Special weighting for marginalized or historically underrepresented groups and representatives across all sectors of youth, women, and LGBTQI+ individuals. As at yesterday, 557 people from 28 sectors had confirmed their attendance to the National Convention. Other sectors and organizations are coming forward on a daily basis to apply for participation in the first National Convention. In line with Section 83 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, the head of state is the convener of the national dialogue to enable citizens to have a conversation on the South Africa that we all want. The head of state is a convener of the national dialogue and has called the first national convention to kickstart the process. A number of structures work together to support and coordinate this process. These included the Eminent Persons Group. It is comprised of 31 respected South Africans appointed by the President as the public embodiment of the national dialogue and to provide advice and guidance. The Eminent Persons Group is co-chaired by Professor Tinyiko Maluleke and Mr. Rolf Meyer. An interministerial committee, which is chaired by the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, comprises all relevant government departments to coordinate government's contribution. A steering committee will be established at the first National Convention. Comprised of various sectors, the steering committee will set the strategic priorities and coordinate the implementation of the national dialogue process going forward. A secretariat housed at NEDLEC is responsible for the day-to-day management of the national dialogue activities and will report to the steering committee. Since April 2025, a preparatory task team has been responsible for preparing for the first national convention. It was established as an interim structure pending the establishment of a broadly inclusive steering committee representing all sectors. It has been comprised of members of the foundations of struggle stalwarts and representatives of the President. On 8 August 2025, the foundations announced their withdrawal from the preparatory task team. Following the withdrawal of the foundations, a convention organizing committee has now been formed, comprising of representatives from civil society, social partners, NEDLEC, UNISA, and the presidency to undertake the outstanding work to organize and run the convention. The convention organizing committee includes volunteers from around 20 civil society organizations. At the Convention Organizing Committee, our task is to ensure that the national dialogue process is handed over to a broadly representative steering committee that will be established at the first national convention. There is no need for unnecessary delays. We must move swiftly to hand over the process to civil society and citizens. and citizen organizations that have genuine interest in solving the challenges our country is facing. We must not allow any grouping to control a process that should truly belong to citizens and society in general. Since embarking on this journey, we have witnessed and received overwhelming support and contributions from many stakeholders. This has helped to reduce the costs of the National Convention. UNISA will be hosting the first National Convention and provided associated goods and services free of charge. Specifically, venues have been secured for the plenary, 2 overflow venues with live streaming, 10 breakaway venues, dining area, and work areas. Furthermore, UNISA is providing facilities for an operations center, which is currently in action downstairs, that other side, which has been running over the past week. Catering, ushers, AV services, printing of discussion documents, signage, conference bags, notepads, pens, and Wi-Fi are all being provided for freely by the University of South Africa. Donations have also been received for the National Dialogue digital platform. Other goods and services such as venue, screens for public viewing, and rail and road transport are being provided at no cost. Delegates will travel by air from the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Northern Cape. Buses are being organized with provincial governments for Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Northwest, Limpopo, and Free State. Shuttles, Gautrain, and PRASA will be used for local transport. Delegates will be accommodated at 5 hotels around this venue. The reduced costs associated with the hosting of the National Dialogue and the funding plan are done with the intention to reduce the burden on the national fiscus. The total budget for the National Dialogue will be developed as the structure and form of the community dialogues are finalized by the National Convention and will depend on in-kind contributions, donations, and other sources that can be mobilized and will be mobilized from various stakeholders across all sectors of our society. All budgetary processes regarding the National Convention adhere to the Public Finance Management Act. The main costs for the upcoming convention are funded from the existing budgets of NEDLEC and the Presidency for Secretariat support, communications, and logistics. The National Convention is just the start of the National Dialogue, which will unfold over several phases. Appropriate steps have been taken to contain the costs of the National Dialogue and utilize public facilities that are available across the length and breadth of South Africa. It will be an example of public participation at scale. Every ward in South Africa becomes a space for democratic engagement. It is expected that each of the 4,300 wards will have at least 3 dialogues. These will be small, accessible dialogues in community halls, schools, churches, and open spaces. There will also be thousands of sectoral and theme-based dialogues. Millions of people will be engaged via community radio, national broadcasters, print media, and social media campaigns. The second National Convention will bring all these threads together, agree on a shared vision, and shape a national compact for transformation. This national dialogue is decentralized by a design. Power lies with the communities, not the center. It is diverse and inclusive, reaching the unreached and amplifying marginalized voices. It will be connected and iterative, with the feedback loops from community to national and back again. Most importantly, it will be action-oriented, using dialogue as a tool for concrete change, not just for conversations. All South Africans will therefore get a chance and an opportunity to participate in dialogues in communities, sectors, and organizations. Everyone will be able to get information and feed in details of their dialogue activities through a mobile app to be launched at the first national convention. To ensure that the national dialogue has a real impact, the outcomes framework of the public dialogues will focus on radical change, rapid response, and rebuilding the nation. An important part of the discussion will be on how to institutionalize the outcome of the national dialogue. We call upon all South Africans to join this process as we seek to address the challenges that face our country and define a better future for all our people. I thank you. Issued by the National Convention Organizing Committee.
Thank you so much for that, those remarks to those members of the media who've just joined us. Of course, that's the statement. We'll take a first round of questions. And when we do that, please do introduce yourself, the media publication that you come from, and then I'll just ask my panelists once again to reintroduce themselves for those members of the media who've just arrived. Do you mind if you just pass the roving mic so that the panelists can reintroduce themselves again? You can start with Shakira. Please introduce yourself, just for the purpose of those media colleagues who just joined us. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shakira Wabe. I'm part of Zabalaza Pathways Institute, which is a civil society organization, of course. And I'm also one of the volunteers from the civil society sector that is ensuring that the planning continues for this national dialogue. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am and will be the spokesperson for the first convention and first convention only until the convention comes up with a steering committee and other officers to take the dialogue forward. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Buichoko Ditlake. I am from Kagiso Trust, currently chairing the organizing committee leading up to the National Convention. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tula Sizwe Makanya. I'm here representing the Forum of Star Wars Foundations, but also wearing a cap of being the chair of the Charlotte Manye Maklage Institute. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Buitumelos Nukwane from UNISA, the Acting Executive Director, Institutional Advancement Department, and UNISA spokesperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those introductions, colleagues. We're going to have a first round of questions. Like I said, do raise your hand, indicate the media publication that you come from. We'll take 3 questions for the first round. I'm noting you. You'll be number 1, Zianda, number 2, EWN 702, Humoto. You'll be number 3. Please go ahead. Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you please assist the colleague with the mic?
Thank you so much. Francis Machata from Progressive Independent News Agency. I know the presidency has spoken about this or tried to highlight this, but how much is the total, was the total budget of this dialogue, and which areas are going to consume more of the budget? And also, are there any private donors to this, and at what margin to the total budget? Thank you.
Okay, you can go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Sorry, since I got the mic. I'm Amanda Koza from News 24. I'm just a bit confused. After the president has opened the convention, can you go into more detail as to what are we doing this weekend? I'm not clear as to what are we doing. And then you talk about organizations and delegates. I thought this was also about just ordinary South Africans attending. I'm a bit confused about the setup, the venue. I thought it was about South Africans coming, even at the convention level. Can you also explain that?
Thank you so much, Zianda.
Thank you very much. It's Zianda Ngobo from Newsroom Africa. I understand from the statement from the presidency that Friday is meant to just be trying to hash out the structure and form of the actual dialogue, but who is going to be participating? I ask this because I've spoken to a few political party leaders, and they say they've not even been invited yet, and this is something that's supposed to be taking place this Friday. So who is going to be there, and what is the purpose for Friday? And then perhaps to dial it back a bit, what informed the decision to announce the date of the 15th of August, seeing that now we've seen these statements, some believe, the foundations believe you've rushed it. So how did you reach this? In other words, what factors led you to believe that you'd be ready enough to go ahead with whatever it is going to be taking place on Friday and Saturday? And then I have noted in the statement today and in the presidency statement where you talk about taking funds from already existing funds from NEDLAC and their support team. But can we get it, unequivocally that there is no emergency procurement that has been solicited to fund this first national convention? Because there's concern there, of course, that has also been raised about the mechanisms in place as well to prevent corruption. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Zianda. We have a colleague from EWN, Khomuto. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Khomuto Modise from Eyewitness News. I just wanted to ask, in the statement you speak about a convention organizing committee that you've put together since the foundations decided to withdraw. You then say you're going to be almost redirecting the tasks that the foundations had. What are those tasks, and how are they going to be allocated to which of the organizations? And I'm asking because there is a sentiment that it's late now, we're a few days away from the convention. So what are the tasks that the foundations have essentially abandoned now that will have to be redirected? And then just to hop onto the question that my colleague asked about the donations, I note that you speak about donations and donations in kind. How much monetarily do we have in terms of the donations? And are you in the position to reveal who the donors are?
Thank you so much. That's the first round of questions. I've noted you will have a second round. Of course, to the panelists, anyone who feels to take this question, please go ahead. Thanks. Shakira? Can you please pass the mic to Shakira? Thank you. Okay, we are fixing the sound. Are you fine, Shakira? Okay, they're helping you shortly.
1, 2.
Okay, go ahead, Shakira.
Okay, I think I'd like to first address the question first of what is this weekend about? Is it citizen-led? And yeah, let me start there. I think one of the most important factors about this press conference today is to literally take South Africa's citizen into our confidence in allaying some of the fears about how citizen-led is this convention. This convention, I believe, as civil society, we are sitting before you to say that we, through our own field work, through utilizing our own resources, through our own effort, we realize how important this process is for South Africans. And because of that, we have largely been really committed to ensuring that this process is truly citizen-led and citizen-centered, and that if it means we have to utilize our own resources to that end, we have. This weekend has about 8 thematic focuses which form the larger part of some of the concerns and challenges that are faced and known by all South Africans, especially by us as civil society who are at the coalface of trying to help some of these communities navigate these challenges. Hence our commitment to ensuring this process does happen. We have also committed our own resources to conduct field work in various places, in various provinces, to find out what people know and believe about this national dialogue. And a lot of people have told us that they didn't think it was about them because they thought the national dialogue is the national convention. The national dialogue is not going to be a 2-day event. It's going to take time over several months being led and facilitated by citizens themselves, with some help, of course, from civil society to ensure the process is as fully participatory as possible. Yeah, so I'll pause there for now.
Thank you. Maybe the other member of the panel should introduce himself first before I carry on.
Thank you. My name is Makuku Mampuru. I'm the executive director, and I justify my presence here in being the head of the Secretariat of the National Dialogue.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm going to answer a few questions, but I think it's important that we understand the context. The call for the national dialogue happened many months back. And after that call, there were volunteers who came from the foundations, or some foundations. Okay, we do have about 9 foundations sitting here. So let me say some foundations. The president's emissary team, as it was agreed that he is the convener in terms of Section 83 of the Constitution, they formed what we call a preparatory task team. And the preparatory task team had subcommittees looking at the preparations for the first convention as well as for the dialogues. So things like methodology, even budgets were looked upon by the preparatory task team in the beginning at a conceptual level. During that time, I need to underline this, the foundations and civil society were becoming very impatient with the convener for not announcing the date, because they wanted the dialogue to start and get on with the work. There was a meeting held in Pretoria, which I attended, and that was the whole theme for civil society. They were saying, announce the date. We are ready. We want to start with the dialogues. So the president announced the date of the 15th, and the preparatory task team continued, therefore, to prepare for the first convention. There were many questions that they had to deal with. Some of the issues which were asked is to who should come to the first convention. I had a question about, is it South Africans? Yes, it is South Africans, but not 60 million of them. They can't fit into this venue. It's sectors that those volunteers who constituted the foundations and civil society, in their own wisdom, analyzing South African society in terms of the sectors, agreed that if we were to have an inclusive process, about 31 sectors should be able to be invited, and it includes everyone. It includes political parties, faith-based, youth organizations. It includes everyone. So the idea is that no one should be left behind, but you can't get 60 million South Africans coming here. Because the first convention, and as it was asked, what is this? What is going to happen here? The first convention is it's a kickoff. It's blowing the whistle in many respects. So it's really an announcement that the national dialogue process has started in earnest. That is very important. Secondly, it's for those representatives, I would say fortunate ones, because South Africans are many, 60 million, who will be here to agree on the process and also to agree on what we call indicative themes. What are these dialogues going to be talking about? Now, I'm saying indicative because you can't prescribe to the people. It's not your process. It's the people's process. The people may decide other themes that they're going to talk about. So that is really what is happening. And the wisdom, for instance, when there was a call for the postponement, the wisdom of the eminent persons group and also of the convener was to say that we should not make a big deal out of the convention. The big deal is the dialogue. Let's try and release the people of South Africa to really start the dialogue. And you might have heard in the media and so on, the dialogue has really started in earnest, you know, whether in terms of controversies. Now, the budget, you see, the budget that people were talking about, the 700 million and so on, it was a budget prepared by the preparatory task team. It's not a government budget. The conceptual framework of how that the dialogue is going to be funded was that 60% will be funded by government from the fiscus and 40% will be funded in cash and in kind by donors. So whether it is the business or it is actually the private, the private sector, civil society has already done a lot. Organizations which have got some infrastructure like churches, local government will come to the party with venues higher and so on. The question was, what is this budget all about? It's a very important question. The most of the money that has been budgeted for at wards and sectorally in a way. So it is expected that we're going to have 3 dialogues per ward for the duration. I think it comes to like 13,600 dialogues. That is where the issues are going to be taking place. That's where ordinary people are going to be discussed about the South Africa they want, the vision of the South Africa they want. So that's where all the budget comes from. This is where, and it is still expected that entities are going to be approached, mobilized by the steering committee, by the EPGs as well, to solicit funding coming not only from the fiscus, because this is a people's project. It's not something that is really a government project. And I think I've tackled the issue of what are we doing this weekend. The political parties have been invited, all of them. We do know that so far 2 have declined. You might have seen in the news. As far as we know, from the organizing committee, we have invited all the political parties. I think the wisdom of the foundations and the preparatory task team was that we should focus more on political parties who are operating at a national level, because political parties are so many, in fact. And their delegations are not a lot. They are the minority in terms of the overall convention, for instance, because the idea was that they should not dominate. It should not be a political debate that comes up. It's the people's debate, the people's conversation. The guarantee that there is no emergency funding in terms of the budget, let me cover that one as well. It's the spokesperson for the presidency and other government spokespersons have reiterated that matter again and again and again. And the same questions are being asked, same guarantees and so on. And they have said that there is no money which is going to flout the PFMA. No money. Government has given those guarantees. And I think we should be able to take their commitment in good faith. Donations, who else has given donations? Transparency. The biggest donation so far even though it's in kind, is UNISA. And I think the spokesperson for UNISA is here. That is the biggest so far. When we're looking at the venue, we looked at other venues. I can tell you that the costs were quite high. So UNISA gave a donation. We also know, for instance, that other NGOs have donated in kind, as it was said, a lot. Their time, their resources, their traveling. Kagiso Trust has also donated, made a donation so far of about 2 million rand that they've put into the process. But it is really hope that there will be many, many other entities who support the future of this country, who are going to make a contribution to that. So if I've left some other questions, I'm not alone here. There are other members of the panel. Is there any question you want to take? Okay.
Yeah. Let me just re-emphasize some few issues. I think we must emphasize that the major cost of this convention is going to be community-level dialogues. If you think about the 4,000 plus of the ward-level dialogues across all 4,300 wards, no? And each will have 3 dialogues. We understand the process, and remember these things will be presented to the convention as it starts, with a very full detail of what has happened, so that there is also a seamless and clear handover to the newly. You'll have a provision is also made for self-activation and convening of various, for example, a particular community in Skukuni, they will say, we are planning to have a dialogue in our community hall. The responsibility of the process is to make sure that they connect with those self-convening activities of communities so that they can be formally recorded to constitute a part of the compact which will emerge at the end of the process. Therefore, the critical process will be to ensure that the infrastructure put in place to facilitate community-level dialogues, both structured and unstructured in terms of self-convening, are indeed captured in the process. So you can imagine the magnitude of that, even in terms of the cost factoring. For me, I think forms, and especially given the commitment for a number of contributions, venues at the local level from the churches and variety of other institutions. That will be the most of the issues Reverend Zo has addressed, but I want to address one particular issue directed. We actually accelerated some of the things which were generally slowed down. The more is debated in the boardrooms, it loses essence. It must be liberated to ordinary South Africans to own and drive the process. With the wisdom of that decision, we believe it remains the most significant decision. If there are limitations and imperfections, let South Africans determine that and correct them. We cannot correct them in the boardrooms. I was chairing the social mobilization subcommittee during the preparators teams. It does not mean that the departure of the foundations meant everybody who was involved in the preparatory processes left. They are remaining not to redirect, but to accelerate the preparedness to the convention as it takes place over the next 3-4 days. And I think that acceleration will speak for itself. For me, that is the most significant part. Other debates, I think we can go on with them perpetually. The most important thing is that South Africans must take over the process, refine it, determine, perfect it, starting with the convention going forward.
Thank you so much for that. That was the first round of question. Of course, the panel, we're going to have the second round, and then of course go to ENCA, and then we'll come back to you. That will be our last round of questions. So I'm going to start with you. Of course, I've noted you from Newsnote. Please go ahead, Power FM.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Gosnati Shazi, Power FM News. I just have two questions. My first question is to Boitumelo from UNISA. A lot has been said about attendance. Of course, the Chancellor of UNISA is former President Thabo Mbeki. I know his foundation pulled out from the preparatory task team, but will he be in attendance for the national dialogue? We are on his institutions. He has called for a national dialogue. So will the former President Thabo Mbeki be there? Yes, just as my first question. And my second question is to the organizing committee. The outcomes and resolutions of this national dialogue, as far as I understand, are not binding. So how do we ensure that this national dialogue does not become a glorified imbizo or a glorified talk shop? How will you guys hold government accountable? And I don't know if you're able to reveal, but what are some of the themes that we're going to be discussing in this national dialogue? Now, on the 6th of July, KZN KZN Police Provincial Commissioner Unhlanhla Mkhwanazi already kickstarted the dialogue. Operation Dudula, with access to public health care, has already kickstarted the dialogue. Unfortunately, a minister in cabinet has already kicked off another dialogue when it comes to racial issues. So what are some of the themes for the national dialogue? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You're taking us forward. What are the themes? I like that. Here's another colleague there. Please go ahead, introduce yourself, which publication you come from. Go ahead.
Dima Katso from Channel Africa. Just to add on, he's asked part of the question that I wanted to understand. What is the legal standing of the steering committee and the recommendations for them to be implemented, or what's going to happen? Are they going to form part of government policy? Can we just get clarification on that? And in terms of the program, why is it so protracted? As you said, we already know what the issues are. Why do we have so many dialogues about a dialogue when the issues are already there? People protest every day. We know what South Africans want to see changes in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to the SAPC. Please pass the mic to Sisbusi from the SAPC. Go ahead, Sisbusi.
Thank you, Busi from the SABC. It's a follow-up to what Dimakatso has basically asked about the standing. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, so for instance, I'm just wondering, in the context of what it is that you're doing, where does, for instance, Parliament come in? Parliament is the are supposed to be the representatives of the people. You're talking about people getting representation, how everybody cannot be here. But for all intents and purposes, we actually have a structure in the form of Parliament that represents the people of South Africa. You have a National Planning Commission, for instance, that's supposed to rally people of South Africa around the development objectives of what it is that needs to be done. So in terms of this particular situation, where does that fit in? And then just a final one that perhaps maybe you talk about the themes and how you, the preparatory committee is talking about the themes. I'm looking at the panel in front of me, and you talk about public participation and representation, but there isn't much representation in terms of the table in front of me. For instance, there's just one lady who's there. If you're going to be talking about themes and what you think is important, surely you should have people that are just not 7 men in front of us here to give us some kind of confidence about what is going to happen going forward.
Thank you so much. Nhlanhla from SABC, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nhlanhla Khatlana. I'm with the SABC. I just have one question. There was a serious outcry in terms of the money that was to be spent for the national dialogue. I'm just curious to know, how much is it going to cost to have this first convention? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. My name is Muluko Mlodo. I have from ENC. I have 3 quick questions. How much of a blow did the departure of the legacy foundations inflict on this preparatory process in terms of the contributions that they were making or that you had anticipated? In terms of the discussion documents that I understand you already have in place, because one of the complaints raised by the legacy foundations was that this seems to be a government-driven process and they're unhappy with that. Who drafted these discussion documents? Was it not prudent perhaps for you to allow this convention that would be attended by all these many people coming from various sectors of society to come and help you draft those? It appears as if you are driving it because you are setting the tone. But then on the issue of whatever recommendations of this process at the end of the 3 or 4 months process, as my colleagues have been harping on that point of the fact that these recommendations are not necessarily binding on the president. Can you really confirm if indeed the president ultimately, as the convener-in-chief of this, can simply look at whatever product in the end and say, I don't take any of this? And what would have been the purpose?
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Francis Loamachate from Pina News again. I think I must declare I'm not a mathematician, but we've got about 4,468 wards in the country. And as per the preparatory team's 700 million budget, if I calculate, it gives me about per three dialogues per ward. It gives me about 2.1 million per each dialogue in a ward. Am I correct to that calculation? Thank you.
Thank you so much. While we are at that, of course, we have our colleagues online. Oh, cool. Newsnote, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Khawelo Magolego from UFM and Newsnote. Just to amplify some of the questions by my colleagues, are you not alarmed by the withdrawal of these several foundations that society, they are regarded generally as credible? That coupled with the fact that the second, third, and fourth largest political parties in this country, which one of them is of course also in government, have rejected this process. Are you not alarmed by that fact? And also with the outcry of society to say, but how do you want to spend 700 million on a conversation when we have just had elections, which leads me to my second question. We have a regular review of the constitution driven by Parliament. I believe it's underway currently as we speak here. Is this not a replacement of those democratic processes? Because we also just came out of an election. Is this not, and this suggestion of a dialogue comes from people who are in government, who have had a majority, and during the majority, they've never suggested a dialogue. The dialogue comes now that we have this electoral stalemate. And in responding to that, also just indicate as to whether you are not worried as esteemed persons in society, whether your credibility would not suffer along the way, as I heard to my last question about the money and your credibility. Have you incurred any costs at this stage we are now? I can see that there's water provided, there's a sound system. Have we already incurred and this cost question is very important because we buried Nelson Mandela. We were all very emotional, the father of our democracy, and you'd know that to this day authorities are still seized with trying to make people account for the costs of that process. Are you not concerned that your own credibility may just suffer as a result of this 700 million rand process? Thank you.
Thank you so much for those questions. We have a question online. Of course, the question online is from one of the colleagues there. Basically wanted to know, are we going to invite the Operation Tudula, the Human Rights Commission? So if you can then clarify that, that's the question online. Anyone want to take that? Please pass the mic.
Thanks very much. We will allocate questions. This is a national dialogue that we are handing back to ordinary South Africans. And I'm quite sure that South Africans will be perhaps the most critical component that we need to appreciate, because I think it's the same question which arises in various forms. Why the national dialogue and what is expected difference which it will make? I think that is the central question that we explore. We all agree that South Africa is going through major challenges. The outcome of the elections in 2024, which has been highlighted, is actually one of the symptoms of an indication of the state of our democracy. And I think it's the wisdom of South Africans at some point to pause that 30 years after our democracy, where are we? Where we could have gone wrong, and how best to reshape and re-envision our next 30 years. Now, I suppose the set of questions to that is, can South Africans provide that kind of a re-envisioning of the future of South Africa? And the notion of the dialogue is premised on that understanding that South Africans have the capability to pause, reflect, which will also include their reflection of how far has the parliament represented them, as somebody was saying, and the lessons learned. We cannot just convince South Africans to come and talk and disappear. It has to mean something, even for our generations to come, that there was a time that South Africans, in their collective wisdom, reflected and remap anew. And I'm convinced that this will happen, but it also continues part of our struggle as South Africans. If we South Africans come out of this dialogue and believe that certain things have to change and change fundamentally, and I think as South Africans we'll have to make that happen. Secondly, I think the issue, and that explains the outcomes we have during this process. And I think by the second convention, South Africans will have declared how it will be effected and be impactful in our various lives going forward. The second issue, colleagues will take other issues. Indeed, the Parliament will be represented in this process through the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker and both the NCOP. And as we know, the configuration of parliament is largely also made up of the political parties which crossed the line and are represented in parliament. And the conglomeration of that is represented in this dialogue. And it was indicated earlier, they've been invited. And I'm sure that they will be here. And the process of engaging with the national, because what we are not looking at is the rehashing of the national plan as we have it today. But it's to revisit South Africans' wisdom to say what needs to happen differently. Because where we are quite aware that something fundamentally needs to change going forward. Unfortunately, which is what we needed to have started with, we had a number of delegates who were supposed to be here. This is just the symptom who could make it in Pretoria by this time. In terms of representation, the youth, women, I think it's big in this organizing committee, which lifespan is ending in 3-4 days. But we can assure, and we will share that list of all of them. Ne? I don't think we are alarmed by any stretch of imagination by the departure of the foundations as it was asked. This process is not about the foundations. It's not about any one of us sitting here today. It's about ordinary South Africans. I don't think there is a slightest impact. And I must say, over the last 4 days, so much was done compared to the past several months. That I can say as a matter of fact. And hence, our confidence that we will hand this process to South Africans on Friday and Saturday. And we have said that it is not about the perfection. It's about creating a basic framework in which will be handed over to South Africans to drive the process going forward. And that will happen. One of the critical issues is that we normally believe we pride ourselves as South Africans is ability to dialogue when we are confronted with the deep challenges. But also the composite of the past few days leading to the departure of the foundations is precisely the question that even in that historic moment of South Africans, something still needs to be reinforced in our ability to talk to each other and find the solutions when the nation so needed them. In a nutshell, there's no impact, and there will be no impact. I think the organized civil society who came on board so strongly have demonstrated that South Africans can rise when the need arises. And they have done that in the totality of the composite of civil society organizations who came and have worked 24/7 to make sure that we have a convention tomorrow. Finally, this is a citizen-led process. And we will witness it when the steering committee is established over this coming weekend. Our ability as citizens and as organizations of civil society across the board, labor, business, civil society, faith-based and so on, to assist and mobilize communities to own up to this process, it is going to make a difference. But it must be citizen-led process. And it can only do that if the citizens' leadership drives the process, even on behalf of South Africans and those whom they represent. And that is why the 30-odd sectors will confirm and close off that kind of a debate, that it is indeed citizen-led. We were not developing the discussion, even during the PTT. We were developing the framework, trying to set up a baseline in which, one, the convention will go through, refine, and strengthen. It was not about the discussion documents. It was about assisting the baseline framework from which the formally established steering committee will take over to assist South Africans to dialogue. Unless I missed something elsewhere, there was never an intention to develop discussion documents. It's a frameworks which will be discussed over the weekend, adopted if adopted. Some of them will be refined as we go along with the consultations at community level. Because the nature of the project as we have, you are not going to be able to have a blueprint, but you must have a baseline framework that can be adapted along the way. And I think somebody will ask on the what level cost. I'm not sure how we arrive at 2.1 million. I can't even conceptualize it in my mind, but let's try others to respond. And I think the ED will also. You want to start, ED?
Let me carry on. Just one point, which we must bury. And it keeps on coming. That is it not a blow that the foundations have withdrawn? Now, let me just read to you an extract from the foundation statement so that we understand what are they withdrawing from. They never said they are withdrawing from the national dialogue. It reads as follows. The decision to withdraw from participating in the preparatory task team and the 15th August First National Convention does not represent a withdrawal from the national dialogue project itself. We remain committed to the principles under which we have been working to its vision and its urgent necessity. So sometimes I wonder where, all this issue that the foundations have withdrawn and it's a big blow. I'm not saying that they are really the anchor of the national dialogues, but they, in their own statement, they say they're still committed to the process. It was agreed with the PTT that the NEDLEC has been appointed as the secretariat for the national dialogue process, for the convention and the national dialogue process. They will be able to receive resources, spend on it in accordance with the PFMA. And I think I'm going to ask the issues about finances, how much we have spent so far, if we have spent anything, there's water. I'm going to refer that to NEDLEC, who is the secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Rev. I'm going to deal with the costs issues in broad strokes. I think the first point that should be made is that, as with all public funds, the funds for purposes of the national dialogue are to be spent in line with the applicable legislative framework. And I think even in their statement, the foundations referred to the Public Finance Management Act and related legislation, whether it is for the procurement of goods and services and all of those. So, I mean, what we can say is that we have systems in place as NEDLAC to make sure that all costs associated with any project we are involved with are accounted for. I think we can take that as a granted as South Africans, as the media. But over and above that, and mindful of the examples that have been cited where things have gone wrong. I came a bit late, so I don't know if anyone mentioned COVID, but I heard the Nelson Mandela Funeral, and so much else, and such is the nature of special projects. And I don't want to suggest that NEDLAC walks where angels fear to tread. But NEDLAC has managed big projects. In fact, with respect to the projects around COVID, members of the media and South Africans may be aware of the Solidarity Fund. Billions of rands were raised, some of which were raised from the private sector. And there were no hints of corruption or mismanagement of funds. In fact, at the conclusion of its work, the Solidarity Fund still had funds remaining in its accounts. So that's the general point I want to make. I also want to make the point that even as we are engaged in this process, there are certain cautionary steps we are taking. For example, up to thus far, the secretariat that has supported the preparatory processes has been seconded thus far. Of course, there's going to be a dedicated secretariat established. Many of you here may know that NEDLAC, there's two aspects to NEDLAC. There's NEDLAC, the social partners that constitute NEDLAC. Organized labor, organized business, organized civil society, and government. Those social partners said to me, as the executive director of NEDLAC, don't spend money you don't have. So strictly speaking, NEDLAC has not spent any money on the national dialogue processes. NEDLAC has availed its goodwill, has availed its staff. So we rather than spend money, we have overworked our staff because we can always claw back on that. We have availed our facilities to the use of the national dialogue processes. All of that, and very little of that has involved money. That's at the staffing costs. Indeed, we are going to be recruiting. We didn't want to recruit, especially senior level positions for the national dialogue, recruit for the steering committee until it takes office. So I'm doubling up as the secretary of the national dialogue process as I'm the secretary of NEDLAC. We also have, on a continuous basis, I'm consulting with legal and auditing experts to make sure that as little as possible gets in. For example, we talk about donations in kind. We talk about UNISA. There was a question about how much the 15th of August is going to cost. The short answer would be, it's all for the account of UNISA. But just because it is donated does not mean it's not quantifiable. So some of the indicative amounts include the fact that if we were using another venue and that venue was charging us, we probably would be spending in the region of 10 million. Maybe about 4 million for revenue, because at least that's the calculation we've made of UNISA, and maybe 6 million as additional costs. There are other costs that we can't run away from. I think the statement has mentioned the fact that hotels have given us preferential rates for the accommodation of delegates. But that we still have to pay. Airlines have given us preferential rates. There are some provinces that will be transporting people on the ground. They will be contributing towards venues. There's so much as they will be contributing towards. They will be catering. All of that is going to be, we're going to keep records of all of it. Because I think Rev has made the point that even if ultimately the amount being spoken about was 700 million or 200 million or $1 billion, most of it will be money in kind. But money in kind is not money. It's money in kind, it's facilities in kind, but all of that is quantifiable. And that is what we are doing. We are continuously keeping track of all of that. And when we close off the national dialogue process, we should be able to come back to South Africans and say, after all is said and done, this process that you had called for has cost us this amount, maybe $1 billion, but only 300 million of that was actually cash. The rest of it can be quantifiable in the form of schools that had to be used, community halls that had to be used, but churches that had to be used. But all of that we're going to be accounting for, and we are keeping track of that. I don't know if there's anything else to do with costs that I have not mentioned. So basically, in short, keep within the legal framework, keep proper records of what we spend, and keep proper records of what is donated, whether in kind or in cash. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. I'm now going to allow Shakira to make her remarks, then we're going to give Tula Sizwe, and then we'll round it off with UNISA. Please go ahead, Shakira.
Thank you. To the question about me being the only woman sitting on this panel, I'd really love to refute that claim. Another team member who's also female, well, she was in the room. I think she quickly stepped out. Her name is Mandisa. She'll probably come back just now. So I'm not the only woman, definitely, and it's not only me, myself and Mandisa. To the question of how are we planning to ensure this is not another talk shop, I don't think it should be only these people sitting here dealing with that question. That question can also be addressed by citizens through the dialogues. They can suggest possible mechanisms to be put in place to ensure that there's some form of accountability when the social compact finally is put together for the next national convention. But besides that, the other question concerning that South Africans are also highly aware of the issues, that is absolutely correct. And that's why civil society, we have seen the importance of having this national dialogue. A lot of ordinary citizens in this country have never really participated in any form of public participatory process and are truly excited at the prospect of being able to have their own insights be taken seriously and at such a high level. And I don't think we should be denying people that right to inform the future of this country, nor deny them the right to put their own accountability mechanisms for the end products, which is supposed to be the social compact. If ordinary South Africans believe that the social compact should then maybe be turned into policy, it's something that the people who receive the final social compact should seriously consider. As for Thabo Mpegi's attendance, I believe the former president is more than available to directly answer that question himself. We cannot do that. We don't know. I don't know him personally. Yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Shakira. We're going to hand over to Tula Sizwe, and then we wrap it up nicely with UNISA, who's hosting us for this convention. Tula Sizwe, over to you.
Greetings once again. I was here representing Stalwarts Foundations, which are foundations of former leaders, those who are passed on and those who are still alive. Just to name a few. It's Charlotte Manyama Clark Institute, Tumanogwe Foundation, Moses Kotane Foundation, Sol Msane Foundation, Roni Moapa Foundation, and many others. We're still receiving calls of other Star Wars Foundation who want to participate. We're here not to replace any foundations. We're here to add value and be active participants in this process, heeding the current call of national dialogues. And as our colleagues have mentioned earlier on, alluded earlier on, that this is going to be citizen-led. Even us as foundation, we're going to play a role, but also we're going to get more from the people on the ground. So this should be a truly people's-led conversation. So the other thing that maybe is a challenge, the glaring challenge that we're facing as a country, which is unemployment, poverty, and many others, GBV and many others. But how do we then create lasting solutions to fight those challenges? We think that this platform that has been created is the right platform for us as South Africans to start a new path and create lasting solutions. So we encourage more people, more foundations to participate in this process so that we can be able to create lasting solutions. Thanks.